Welcome to this edition of Morgan Asked For podcast. Not a lot to talk about, not a lot of news. I was listening to some talk radio today, and as they said, June is the worst month for actual sports. Baseball, you're starting to see some things. The NBA Finals are there, but that's not our topic, and it's really not an Iowa thing. A little bit more interesting this year with Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers being there for the first time in 25 years. But overall, this isn't an NBA show. And sitting here in Iowa, we aren't an NBA-crazed area. We're going to talk a little bit about the Fever, and then that's really about it. Let's start with the NBA. Two small market teams, but the MVP. And then, as we've talked about, yes, he's an Iowa State guy. Yes, he's a Midwest guy. But Tyrese Halliburton moving up the face of the league list as fast as you can.
Definitely is. Two small markets with the NBA Finals. Somebody said it best. The ratings are probably not going to be very good for the finals, but the basketball should be really good.
Right.
What doesn't make any sense on its, on the surface. Good basketball should equal good ratings, but we know since LA, the Celtics, LeBron, Steph Curry's not involved, the ratings will probably be down. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean the basketball is going to be bad. The basketball should be really good. What I'm interested in is obviously Oklahoma City's the favorite, and they should be. They have the MVP. They're the best team, the best defensive team in however many years. We've all seen the stats. One thing I really am looking forward to is, can the game go 6 or 7? At least go 6. But if you look at the betting odds, the Thunder minus 700.
Right. It's big.
You're not going to bet that unless you're a loan shark or you're trying to hide money, right? You're not going to bet those odds. The Pacers are plus 500. So if you want to bet pizza money, $10 or $20, there's a little value there. And I think I saw some stat the other day where since 2000, the 10 biggest favorites in NBA Finals history, 2 of the underdogs have hit. And I think that was the Mavericks over the Heatles, and then the LeBron Cavs when they came back from 3-1 deficit to the Golden State Warriors. So it is possible, of course.
I heard a couple Miller and Condon or the betting guys talk show here in Des Moines. I don't know if you've ever listened to them, but they talked about, obviously you can't bet minus 700 for the Oklahoma City. You just can't do it. And plus 500 is a lot. The bet he would make is to bet Indiana to force game 6. And then if they hit that, then bet them in game 7. But do it more of make sure because they could play a heck of a series and just force game 6, because the gentleman's sweep is the favorite. It's 5 games, 4-1. Indiana gets 1 at home. Oklahoma City wins the rest. Most people think it's going to be 4 or 5 games, but bet it to go 6 or 7, and then you could roll in. If you hit that one, you roll into Indiana for a game 6 or game 7 if you think they are going to be able to pull it out.
Do you know what the odds were for that?
I don't think they talked about this. It's just with the so big of odds, that's a way to play it to get a little bit better odds without just – I mean, obviously, if you bet Indiana to win the series, that's great odds, but it's really hard to do.
I think Nick Wright said, and I could be wrong on this, he said a day or two ago, you could get Oklahoma City to win the series in 5 or 6 at like minus 240.
Okay.
Which is, it's still a lot. I mean, you still have to risk a lot to win that. But he thought that Indiana was good enough to at least win 1 game.
Yep.
But he didn't think it was going to go 7. So if you want to try to find a little bit of value, you could bet the Thunder to win in 5 or 6 at like minus 240. So you still have to risk a lot. But like I said, 2 times a lot since 2000, we've seen a couple of these big underdogs come through. And, my gut feeling is the Thunder are going to win it, probably like most people do. But, at minus 700, you can't bet that.
No, you just can't. And they were talking about it the other night when Indiana clinched. Indiana stole game one, absolutely stole it. Should not have won. And that changes the entire series. If Indiana could come do something like that in game one, I don't think they come out and just dominate, but somehow, somebody hits a shot to win it because they stay close. Then obviously that changes the entire thing. And they just have to be able to make plays. The problem is, and you just hit it, Oklahoma City is the best defensive team and the best defensive team over several years. It's not just 2025 Thunder number one defensive team in the NBA. They're the best rated NBA defense in years. Now, Indiana is the best offense. So that is the plus minus.
That is. And typically the defense usually comes out on top. Most of the time they find a way to slow the offense down just enough. For Oklahoma City, they're one of the best defensive teams of all time, actually, from the stats that I've heard. So, for me, I hope it's not a sweep. Of course, we all do. We want the series to go long. If this thing can at least go 6, I'd be satisfied. Before you've seen the game played, I think looking into game 1, you could get the Pacers at +9 to cover the spread. And I'm thinking about throwing a little bit on that. But these basketball games, it's almost like you want to see the first game to see how it plays out. But then
or at least play the first quarter and then live
the first quarter. But basketball's so weird. I mean, in these 7-game series, whoever wins each game each night, you feel like, oh, that's the team that's going to win the series. And then they play 2 nights later, and then the other team wins. So it's kind of wild how basketball in a 7-game series can kind of fluctuate like that.
Here's another stat that is just crazy. Oklahoma City this year against the Eastern Conference, 29-1. That's insane.
That's really good. They're the heavy favorites. Like I said, they should be. They'll probably win it all. But like I said, at plus 500 for the Pacers, it almost feels like a little bit of a bet just on them for the heck of it.
Yeah. The problem with Tyrese is they have several people they'll put on him. It won't be one person guarding him the entire series. They will just keep bringing a new guy in, and a new guy in, and they are going to make it really hard for Halliburton.
They definitely will. And speaking of Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers, the series they just got done playing, I know I didn't have it written down to you, but the Eastern Conference Finals MVP obviously went to Siakam, and I think it was a 5-4 vote.
Yep.
Was that correct? So it was a coin flip, which I thought it should have been. I thought Siakam was a more consistent player, but I thought Halliburton had the higher highs and the more clutch moments. So
he made the plays for the series.
That's exactly right. So I would have voted Halliburton, but I do understand why Siakam got it. And Siakam also played a pivotal role, I think, when the Raptors won their title. So as far as experience goes, I think it's not by much, but I think the Pacers have a little bit of an edge with Siakam, actually. Again, it's not a lot. Typically in the finals, we're used to seeing LeBron, Steph, Kevin Durant, some of these other players. This is a totally different finals that we haven't seen in a long time. Like I said, ratings will probably be down, but that doesn't mean the actual basketball will be down.
No, this is going to be high-level basketball. Now, I do think Oklahoma City wins and wins relatively easy, but it's just because they're that good. Indiana's really good too, but I do think Oklahoma City is a step ahead. Another thing that just you never know, somebody gets hurt in game 1 or game 2, and then that changes the series. That does happen, and it sucks. But Jason Tatum, them losing him ended the series hopes. They were going to lose that game anyway, even though he's having an unbelievable game. But they could have still came back and won the series if Tatum was playing. But once he went down, the series was over.
Yeah, injuries. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. for either team. Someone could go down with an injury. It could change the entire outcome. We spoke about that with the Celtics. I think they would have probably lost that series anyway, but
Right.
you never know, right? So it's all a what if game, and kind of getting it more into the Knicks before we move on. I had texted you this. They fired Tibbs, and to me, I'm not an NBA expert. I don't pay attention to the NBA as much as I do like the NFL, but this feels like when something like this happens, I guess I go, okay, what's the history of the franchise? Are they well run or poorly run? Well, in our lifetimes, the Knicks are poorly run, kind of like the Cleveland Browns, the New York Jets, the Jags of the NFL. So I've heard some people make the argument that this may turn out to be better long term, and it might. Time will tell. But my gut feeling is this is a mistake.
Oh, I agree. Or is this a little bit like Golden State when they had who was the guy that they fired to get Steve Kerr?
Jackson,
Mark Jackson.
Mark Jackson, yeah.
He was doing okay. They weren't horrible. They had kind of turned the corner. They fired him and got Kerr in, and they've been unbelievable ever since. That's the only thing that I can think that they're trying to do. He got them to believe he runs it his own way. He does it differently than most other coaches. He plays his starters tons and tons of minutes. He plays unbelievable defense. He did in Minnesota. He did in Chicago. He did it at New York. He will have a job next year. I'm not worried about him. Or is it somebody inside that just was done with him? Because I bet he is hard to play for.
So Nick Wright brought this up today because it was breaking news right as our show started. And he brought up a good point, which I kind of agree with. He thinks this decision was made before the playoffs even started.
Okay.
Unless the Knicks won the championship, Tibbs was gone,
Yep.
Which kind of makes sense because it's the first they've gone since forever, right? And however many years it's been. It doesn't make sense to get rid of Tibbs. So it does make sense that the decision was made pre-playoffs.
Right.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. That decision probably was made before the playoffs started. I don't know. It's just poorly run franchises when they make decisions like this. I would bet against it working out well. And
I agree. But here's the weird thing about the NBA. Nobody lasts very long in the NBA. It seems like, Greg Popovich is a unicorn. Denver fired their coach a week to go in the season, and they won the title 2 years ago. I mean, it doesn't matter. When you win a title, you get fired in a year or two. That's just the way of the NBA. They're going to go hire someone that's been like I could see them going to hire Malone from Denver that just got fired. Go hire him. I mean, and Thibodeau going to Denver. I mean, that wouldn't shock me.
No, it wouldn't shock you. And I love Tibbs. Tibbs is old school.
Yep.
He's going to play his guys a lot of minutes, which I agree with. I like that a lot. He's an old school guy. Like, hey, you're getting paid millions of dollars to play basketball. Get your ass out there and play.
Yep.
If you're tired, suck it up. Like, that's the least of my worries. You should be tired. You should be worn down. Now, there comes flaws with that.
Yep. But
I kind of root for Tibbs' coaching style because I believe that's the way it should be. You're paid millions of dollars. Get your butt out on the court and play.
Yep.
It does have its flaws, though, no doubt. And that's part of the reason he's never won a championship. He ran down Derrick Rose and those Bulls teams. But, again, they were going against LeBron and the gang. So
Yep.
I don't even know, even if he adjusted his coaching style back in those days, if he could have got past LeBron. I don't think it would have mattered. But no, for the Knicks, to me it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
The first year he was there, they didn't make the playoffs. The next 3 years, I think they went semifinals, and then the Eastern Conference Finals.
Right.
They were taking the necessary steps like NBA teams do. And then just to get rid of him, it seems like a typical Knicks move. Now, again, they might bring in some young hot shot that gets them over the top. It could work out. But I would bet against it because they're the Knicks.
We'll say this. I'm not a Knicks fan, but it was fun watching them and seeing Spike Lee have fun again and all the other celebrities, and then those celebrities traveling to Indiana and watching it, and then McAfee clapping right back at them. That's what the NBA does better than every other league. They do it better than the NFL. The NFL just, for some reason, has It's the shield. It's the team. It's not about individual people. You don't see, and some of it might be because those celebrities are courtside in basketball. When Peyton Manning is watching a game and the celebrity, he's up in his suite. He's not front row, because front row in the NFL actually is not a good seat. It isn't.
Right.
I mean, I told you when I went and watched Iowa State this year, I got like in the 5th row and it was actually too close. Yeah, it's not good. You actually want to be in like row 20. But seeing those people be interested in basketball and make it fun, and that's what the NBA puts those seats in. They're right next to it's weird to see the last guy on the bench has a way worse seat than like Spike Lee. Spike Lee gets to look at the backside of Thibodeau every time. I mean, that's all he gets to do.
Thoughts and prayers to John Cougar Mellencamp. He's getting roasted, in my opinion, as he deserves. He's out of touch. But I agree. I usually agree with Pat McAfee on most of his things. So he got handed a microphone. He did what he was supposed to do. He went into WWE mode, which, like you just said, makes the NBA kind of unique in a way where you can do stuff like that. And you have celebrities at home games or traveling, and it makes for a unique environment compared to the NFL, where the NFL, just like you said, is the shield and a little bit more boring or corporate. But that is a strength of the NFL. They don't need stars to succeed or to get ratings. It doesn't really matter if the Packers, the smallest market in the NFL, does well, or New York, the biggest market. The NFL succeeds regardless. So the NBA playoffs have been fun. I've enjoyed it. I am looking forward to the finals. Like I said, even though the ratings are going to be down, we know that. The basketball should be really good. And as somebody pointed out too, even though the ratings are probably going to be down, the NBA already signed their big deal for the TV networks. So it doesn't really matter. The deal is done.
Right. Yeah, and speaking of the TV deal being different, did you watch the game Saturday night and watch the end of the NBA on TNT?
I did, and I was going to.
It was too late. I had to get up early the next morning, and I ended up not getting up early, but I should have. And it's one of those things. I didn't realize how long that show had been on. 36 years. Before Barkley, before Kenny's, Ernie Johnson's always been on it. And it was funny, they showed it when Barkley joined, how much they looked different. Ernie had a goatee and hair. And I mean, it was just, but those guys are so good together. They're going to go to a new network. It's going to be the same show, but it will not be the same. I don't care what they say, ESPN/ABC, Disney, whatever company you want to call it. Those guys aren't going to get to do it. And I love them. They cussed. They didn't care. Shaq just said, F it, and went about his business, and he didn't care. And Kenny Smith did the same thing. It's just – and then Ernie Johnson, to send it off, in tears, because he doesn't know any different. Literally, he's been with Turner Company since 1989. And then even, Kevin Harlan and Stan Van Gundy and Reggie Miller, when they were sending it off, I love that team. I think Stan Van Gundy is unbelievable. I love him when he does that same group does the NCAA tournament when they're on Turner.
Yeah.
I love those three. They were in Des Moines a couple years ago when I was there watching them in Des Moines. They were with Iowa State in Omaha, I'm pretty sure, last year. I love watching those three work together. Now, those guys are different because, like Kevin Harlan, he'll go do the NFL, and obviously he's not working for Turner at that time. So those guys are a little bit different, and Reggie Miller is going to get a job with NBC or ESPN doing NBA because he's Reggie Miller, especially if Indiana somehow can win this. That helps him and his status, bringing the Pacers back up, and he's the face of the Indiana basketball besides Larry Bird. But it was just a great send-off. They do a great job, and I'm just worried ESPN is going to ruin it.
ESPN, they'll ruin it for sure, like they do. But the flip side of that is the core guys are still there.
Yeah,
all of them. So that's really what makes the show, is the core guys being there. Barkley, Shaq, Kenny, all those guys. So the show will still succeed and it'll still be good. I think it'll just be a watered down version, I guess, if you want to call it, because it's going to be on ESPN. But no, it's the women in San Antonio, Texas can rest easy now, knowing that Charles might not be able to call them out as often now. That may be off limits.
And I was listening; those same guys were talking. They're worried about, ESPN has to get it to Scott Van Pelt in his show right after every game. Like 2 minutes later, there is Scott Van Pelt, and that's what makes that show great. You don't turn into that show for NBA analysis. That's not what you turn it in. That's not even what they give you. They don't care. I mean, it's entertainment. The best part of that show is when they ask Charles Barkley, is this player in the NBA or not? And he has no idea because he doesn't care. I mean,
just like the rest of us.
Right. It's like, I don't know. And no, he's a 7-year vet. What?
Yeah, he gets a little bit of crap for that, but no, that is the best part of the show is just the free will, and they go all over the board. You never know what direction they're going to go into each night after a game or whatever's going to be asked, and a little bit of that is going to be stripped going into ESPN. Now, the flip side is ESPN they are partnered with Pat McAfee, and Pat McAfee does whatever the hell he wants, which is good. So again, I don't think it's going to be a total failure or anything, but I do think it is going to be watered down some.
Yeah, because McAfee is a little bit more watered down than he was. He doesn't cuss like he used to. You can just like when he talks, he goes, "We can't say that word," things like that. So he can overall do what he wants to do, and he's been great for that network because they were so conservative in what they wanted people to say, very liberal in their projection and what they're trying to do, but very, you can't say whatever you want. They were very, constricted, maybe a better word, on what they want you to say. McAfee has definitely done that on game day and his show. And hopefully they let Charles Barkley be Charles and Shaq make fun of him and Kenny Smith to make fun of both of them. And then Kenny Smith run up to his board and trip or whatever they do. I mean, it's
right.
And then Ernie just directing it like a symphony, and it's just great because he'll see where it's going, and then he just rides right into it. It gets all over whoever they're making fun of that night.
Ernie's the best. Ernie knows he knows the guy that's about to make a fool of himself, and then he feeds right into it, and then they all make fun of the one person.
He puts the ball in the tee for them to hit it right into the water.
Yeah, he does. No, that show's great, and I'm glad it's continuing. No matter how it works on ESPN, I am glad it's going on because it's like on Instagram. I watch clips all the time from that, and
I don't watch it live necessarily, but you see the 5-minute clip that you watch the next day, and that's what it's about.
It is. That is what it's about. And some of the clips I watch are from like 5 years ago or some from 5 minutes ago. You never know, but it's one of those shows that you don't have to watch consistently to keep up. It's like The Office or Seinfeld. You could just come in anytime and watch a clip. You're like, oh yeah, that's the guys, or that's the show, or that's the point of it. That's the great thing about that TV show, and hopefully ESPN does their best to keep that intact as much as they can.
Yeah, I worry that they're going to inject Stephen A. Smith into that show.
Screaming Stephen.
I think he's going to want to wiggle into that show, and then they're going to have to pass it to their bigwig, Scott Van Pelt, because he does his 11 o'clock Sports Center. And he's got all the power in the world in ESPN because he makes him do a Sports Center show out of his home. I mean, yeah, he doesn't live in Bristol. He doesn't live in New York. He lives in Washington, D.C. or Maryland, wherever he actually lives. And he has a studio right up the road or right downtown there. That's how powerful he is. And he just does it by himself. And then Stanford Steve joins when he can.
Yeah, Stanford Steve on that show. Scott Van Pelt, boy,
I love him. Yeah, I don't criticize him at all. I love him, but I just know that, if the game happens to go to double overtime or something, they're not going to have time for that show, and they're going to go straight to Van Pelt, and then those guys are out.
Yeah, and they probably will. And Scott Van Pelt, when I agree with that guy, I love him. When I disagree with him, I hate him, which is that's a good thing. That's what they want. That's the point of being one of the biggest faces of any sports network is when you agree, you agree, and when you disagree, you hate them. I mean, not hate,
Right.
but you get the point. Scott Van Pelt's one of those for me. Sometimes I think he's a little self-righteous, pearl clutching type stuff. But when he's on his game, when I agree, I'm like, man, he's, there's nobody better. So we'll see how the transition goes. It'll be, like I said, it'll be watered down for sure in the beginning. And we'll see if they let them do their old habits, their old tricks, or if it's, more of a PG-13 type version of the show.
It'll be PG-13. It won't be R. And the best is, Charles, I saw a thing, bumping guys, and banging guys, and just, he just steps into it and they just play. And then Shaq is just sitting over there dying laughing. He can't control himself. I just hope that continues. But it's just like everything. It's going to be really weird this fall to see Big Ten games at 2:30 on CBS instead of the SEC. It's going to be the same broadcasters. It's going to be the same everything. They're just going to be at Ohio Stadium or in the Big House or at, Penn State. And they're not going to be at Death Valley. They're not going to be at Alabama. They're not going to be in the swamp. It's changing. It's not right, wrong, and different. It's just life. But this is the old man in me coming out that change is hard and change is weird and it's hard to watch.
Change is hard. I'm starting to get a little bit older. Not too old yet, but a little bit older. And I agree, change is a little bit difficult. I'm starting to become a grumpy old man on the porch, get off my lawn. I can admit that. I am. But yeah, it's a little bit different. All these networks and these deals going through the college football schedule. So most of it came out different times, which was interesting to see. But it's a changing of the guard, definitely over all the networks.
Speaking of the networks and college football, I just want to touch this. Iowa State, 11 a.m. Big Noon kickoff is going to be there. So that is 3 times out of the last 4 times it's been in Ames that game day and now Big Noon kickoff have been there. But 0 of those times has it happened at Kinnick Stadium or in Iowa City. I don't know why that is. I'll be honest. This was played because of Iowa being in the Big Ten, and Fox has that big affiliation. They had to ask for it or whatever because the things are supposed to happen in Big Ten stadiums, but there was no other good game. And then the Fox does have a little bit of a relationship with the Big 12, like 1 game a week or something. It's nothing like the Big Ten does in Fox. But it is weird to me that 3 out of the last 4 times has been in Ames. One of the big shows has been there, and no times in Iowa City. That's a little weird to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why that is, but I do like that Big Noon kickoff is going to be there for that. I sent you a screenshot of that the other day, and it should be fun. That means Gus and Clad will be on the call, right? From my understanding.
It's not 100% guaranteed, but it's
most likely.
It's very likely. They usually do that game.
Mm-hmm. So that'll be awesome because those are about 2 of the Gus and Clad are about my favorites as far as.
And Clad is great. Clad, played at that in that stadium against Iowa State when he was at Colorado. So he has experience there. That I love that when those guys that are there have been in that situation that he's trying to talk about. He's played on that field. He's been in that locker room. He's been right where all the visiting teams are. And obviously, he's starting to become a little bit more of a homer for the Big Ten and SEC. I do see that change. But for a long time, he was kind of a critic of following the crowd and everything. But the bigger he gets, just like everybody, they kind of talk a little bit with the crowd a little bit more. But he does have Big 12 in his lineage. And, Colorado being back in the Big 12, so you can have that discussion as well. Obviously, Colorado is nothing like when he played with Deion now than when he played. But, it's just here's what it is. It's a 2.5-hour infomercial for Ames, Iowa, and Iowa State University. You can say what you want. Yes, they're going to probably a little bit more about Iowa on the game, but all that B-roll footage when they leave to go to a commercial or when they come back is going to be Central Iowa, Ames, and Iowa State University, pictures and videos. And, they're going to have a human interest story on an Iowa player or an Iowa State player, or probably both. And it's going to be about Iowa. And that's a great thing, no matter if you're a Hawkeye or a Cyclone.
Yeah, the game itself and the lead up for the big noon kickoff, it's going to support both Iowa and Iowa State. Yep. So it's great that they're coming to that to that matchup. Somebody had on one of their shows a few weeks ago when they announced it. Maybe it was on FS1, but anyway, they said Iowa State's one of the most underrated matchups in the nation as far as rivalries go, because a lot of rivalries are toward the end of the year.
Yes, it is different in that way.
Mm-hmm. And Iowa State is at the beginning of the year, of course, as all of us as Iowa State fans, we all know that. But most people outside the state of Iowa, they're used to these big interstate or whatever rivalries going on toward the last game of the season or toward the end of the season, whereas Iowa State, it's in the beginning.
Yeah, and that's, and you go back to next year, going to be, 25th anniversary. But in 2001, when I was at Iowa State, obviously Twin Towers and everything, the game was supposed to be that week. It was Tuesday of that week that it happened, and they moved the game to the end of the year, and that was really fun. It was end of the year. We had a good season. We were going to a bowl game. Iowa was turning it around. I can't remember if they went to a bowl game that year or it was the next year. It was the next year they went to the Orange Bowl, but I can't remember if they went to one in 2001. I believe they did. I think it was the Alamo Bowl maybe they went to. But
I think you're right.
It was fun at the end of the year. And then, the Hawkeyes had Kyle McCann at quarterback, who I knew from growing up from Creston, right down the road from where I was from. But, yeah, the end of the year ones, there's been talk that they would like to push it towards the end. But Iowa, the Big Ten and the Big 12 both play their season out all the way to the end instead of leaving that game.
Right. The Big 10, the Big 12 actually play, the required number of conference games, unlike the SEC. So good on the Big 10, the Big 12 as far as that goes. But no, that's going to be an awesome moment. No matter what the stories that they have going on, it's going to be just a highlight of the state of Iowa. And who knows who they're going to bring in for like a guest picker or celebrity guest for that week. Maybe Tyrese Halliburton, right? I mean, that would be obvious.
Right now, it's got to be him. They're going to try their darndest to get Caitlin Clark, and actually this will get Caitlin Clark as well. To have both of them. Caitlin Clark plays on Friday night and then plays on Sunday, so she actually has Saturday off. That Miller and Condon or somebody said that they already looked that up. That she plays Friday night and Sunday, so technically has Saturday off. Now, they never have an off day, really.
Right.
But they could fly her in and then fly her right back out.
Yeah, she could literally show up for 1 hour for the show and then get out of there. That would be awesome to have her and Halliburton both there.
Yeah. And it does seem like they're friends. I mean, he goes and supports her, she supports him and the team. But, when Halliburton's sitting in the crowd, he's two people down from McCaffrey. So I don't think it's not like they don't like each other. I don't think you'd sit by someone when you didn't have to.
No, I think they definitely hang out on and off the court. That whole thing is it. We've talked about before. The Pacers and the Fever feel like a collegiate partnership in a way, which is a good thing. And I mean, if Halliburton, like I told you a week or two ago, hopefully Halliburton can teach Caitlin how to get her turnovers down whenever she gets back playing. Because when he had that amazing triple-double game with 0 turnovers, that's unheard of. But we need Caitlin to get her turnovers down in the long run. But yet, no, they all hang out. We see the pictures and the videos before and after games. The Pacers are at the Fever games and vice versa. We saw Caitlin and some of the players at that last playoff game where the Pacers clinch a series. I mean, it's very collegiate feel to it, which is really cool.
And I think that has to do there's two things about that make it a little different. One, it's the Midwest. That's just how people are. They're both from, we talked about this last week. They're both from the Midwest. They didn't come from Florida or the East Coast or the West Coast and play at Iowa State. One's from Des Moines, Iowa, and one's from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. They're both right in the Midwest. And then also Indianapolis is smaller, and that's just what you do in Indianapolis. It's not Hollywood. It's not New York City. It's Indiana, and there's maybe not as much to do as those other places, but that's what you do is you go to a Colts game, you go to the Pacers game, you go to, the Fever game, you go to the Indianapolis 500. That, you have your sporting events, and then you're 100% behind them. Just like, we'll never get it, but if we had a team, that's what we would do. And speaking of kind of Oklahoma City, going back to that, if you look at Oklahoma and Oklahoma State's basketball crowds since the Thunder have moved to Oklahoma City, they're way, way down because Oklahoma's City Thunder, sell out. Small market. They don't have any other pro franchises. That is their team. They are the Thunder. It's Oklahoma's team, just like it's Indiana's team. And Indiana is basketball, and that's what people forget too. Rick Carlisle said this. In 49 other states, it's basketball. In Indiana, special.
Well, he's exactly right about that. The smaller markets, you don't have as many teams to hang on to, especially professionally. You speak about Oklahoma. With the Thunder there, that's really all they have besides the two college teams, right, week in and week out. Right. So it is a different feel, and it's a collegiate feel, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Now, Oklahoma City to Dallas is not very far. I've driven that a few times, and every time I go there, I don't realize it's not that far. And I didn't know this for a long time, but when Texas and Oklahoma play in Austin or in Dallas, it's closer from Oklahoma than it is from Austin to Dallas, because Dallas is way up north in Texas. And that's that's kind of a funny thing how, you're not very far into Texas to Dallas. That's probably good on the NBA. We're about 40 minutes in. What was the last thing on your list? I need to head into there. What did you write, Trev?
So I wrote down that the Detroit Lions have an interesting little stat for bettors. We haven't talked much NFL lately, which is fine. It's not NFL season, but so the Lions, we've talked about the Lions a lot over the last few years, rightfully so. They're one of the better NFL franchises lately, which is kind of shocking to say. But we know they lost their coordinators, and then they just lost their center the other day, which actually is not a surprise to Lions fans and the Lions staff. They actually thought he might have retired a year ago. Okay. So it's not a shock to the Lions. It is a shock to like NFL media that didn't see it coming. The Lions have been preparing for this for 2 years, just like they've been preparing for the loss of Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Now we'll see the results. Like, did they prepare well enough? We don't know that. The interesting stat about the Lions is this season, the Lions' road schedule is insane. Yes. They have their divisional opponents, and then I think they play on the road. I don't have it in front of me. I tried to pull it up, but I believe they play at Kansas City, Baltimore, Cincy, the Eagles, and Washington, and maybe the Rams. I think it's something like that. I apologize.
Well, they're going to play a first-place schedule.
But this is beyond a first-place schedule. It's really tough on the road. But the interesting stat for the Lions is they have 8 games this coming season where they have a rest advantage. That's the most in NFL history. So they will have the rest advantage 8 weeks versus their opponent.
Do you know the stats on the team that has more rest to win?
I don't, but I do know the previous record was 6.
Okay.
6 games. So they're at 8. And then if you look even further into it, they only have 1 game this season where they're at a rest disadvantage.
Okay.
So
that's probably a bigger thing.
So they're at a +7, 8 minus 1, 7. The NFC North, the Bears are -3 in that category.
Okay.
And everybody is minus in that, whatever it is. So as tough as the Lions' schedule looks, and everybody, which I understand, is betting their under on their win total,
Yes.
the Lions actually have the biggest rest advantage in NFL history this coming season.
So you're saying almost go maybe go the
Maybe.
other way.
Maybe it means nothing. I don't know, because it could be a meaningless stat, but 8 games is the most in NFL history, according to the records.
That is intriguing to think about.
Something to think about. Like I said, the Lions are +7 in the over-under rest advantage compared to theirs versus the minus compared to your Bears, which are -3. So a big difference. And
Yeah.
like I said, a lot of people are jumping off the Lions bandwagon, which I understand. They lost both coordinators. Their center just retired. But that could be one of those things that kind of evens the playing field out type of deal.
Yeah, I agree. I hadn't even looked that far into the NFL. That's why you're the expert, Trev.
That's a weird random stat that might not mean anything, but it's one that's interesting.
All right. Anything else, Trev?
No, the Fever won tonight. Finally,
Yes.
They stopped the bleeding, which they need to do. Thank God. Just stay around 500 until Caitlin Clark gets back. If they can do that, then they should be fine. We'll see how Caitlin plays when she gets back. Hopefully, it's not a year-long injury that's a nagging one. We talked about this before with her leg there, but they stop the bleeding. Stay around 500. If she comes back, I think they'll be fine. But Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Holinoff, and this is no surprise to Fever fans, but when Caitlin Clark gets back, it should be Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, and Aaliyah Boston. Should be the main 4. And then whoever you want to put as a 5th starter, fine. You can rotate it, whatever it is.
Yep.
But the main 4 from last year are the main 4 this year, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, all the others are still just they're additions, and they are big additions, and they'll help. But it's still those 4.
It is still those 4, but yeah, I was just
Well,
that game tonight. It was just thank God they stopped the bleeding and just win a game, because they're talented enough that they should be able to win, especially at home. That game that they lost to Connecticut was pretty embarrassing. I mean, I think they have a losing record at home this year, which is kind of weird, but they're talented enough. They need to win some games without Caitlin Clark, and they finally did.
Yeah, because that picture of Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, and Caitlin Clark at the Pacer game. So those 3, again, they don't have to be best friends, but they're good enough friends to go to a game together and sit next to each other. And those are your core 3 minus Kelsey Mitchell, who would be a 4, but she might have something else to do, whatever. Or, doesn't matter. Doesn't have to go to those games. But those young 3 girls did a great job, and those are your face of the franchise, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely they are. So Lexi started the season on the bench. Yep. For those of us that watched her last year, we thought she maybe should be a starter. Well, she should now. That's proven. I think she will be a starter the rest of the season, assuming health, of course.
Yeah.
But I think the Fever are in an okay spot. But the big question mark, though, is how does Caitlin rebound from this injury? Because she's never really had one.
Right.
And this could be something that's just a blip on the radar, or it could be something that lasts the entire season. And if it lasts the entire season, they're not going to go to the finals. I mean, It's as simple as that.
And do you think Stephanie White, their coach, you're never glad that they're losing, but maybe losing a game or 2 that they shouldn't have, that Connecticut game, get their attention, say, hey, you're not as good as you think you are, to the entire team, not Caitlin Clark necessarily, but to the entire team. And maybe they're skipping a few steps on the off days and practice, stuff like that, and maybe get their attention back a little bit.
You would hope so. And of course, now I'm seeing a lot of people saying, bring back Chrissy Sides. And I told you last year for the first 10 games when everybody was calling for Chrissy Sides.
She's not as bad as you. Yeah, she's not as bad as you think. But.
Let's be, because that goes back to New York Knicks. We'll just fire the coach and everything will be fine. Yeah. And that doesn't always work out. Firing the coach is a lot of times it's just a weak solution to a bigger problem. Do I think Stephanie White's better than Chrissy Sides? Yes, I do. But we're finding out now that maybe, Sides wasn't as bad as we thought.
Right.
It's early in the season. There's been injury. So I think Stephanie White will be okay long-term or really good long-term. But this goes back to the conversation we had last year where everybody was calling for Chrissy Sides' heads the first 5 or 10 games. And I was like, whoa, let's slow down a little bit because you don't want to go through 3 or 4 coaches in 2 years type of deal. And that's not going to happen now, of course. But injuries happen. Team chemistry happens. It takes a while. And we're seeing that play out now with Caitlin Clark having her first injury.
Yeah. Well, let's wish her well and come back when she's healthy. I'd rather sit her for 2 extra games right now. And then she's healthier. You're never healthy now. I mean, I get it. But you're healthy as you can be for the rest of the season. Instead of coming back 2 games and then 5 games down the road, you tweak it again.
Yeah, you don't want to rush back. We saw this team last year start off terrible. I think 1-10 or whatever they were. Yeah. And then they fought their way back to the playoffs. So, like I said, if they can stay around 500 without Caitlin Clark, give her all the time in the world. If she needs to miss 3 or 4 extra games and then the Fevers stay right at 500, that's okay. That's not the end of the world. But yeah, we'll see how she comes back from this. It's her first injury. I'm not going to make any bold predictions either way, but I'm not, as long as they stay around 500 and Caitlin only misses 6, 8 to 10 games max, I'm very confident that they will make the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. So, well, have a great week, Trev, and we'll be back next week. We'll figure out the day, but it is Wednesday night here, the 3rd of June, or Tuesday night, 3rd of June, off a day. It's summertime now. I have no idea what day it is. So my days are all mixed up now. So, nope, everything's going well out there. Where are you at tonight, Trev?
I'm just up in Denver. I got some things to do in the morning here and all day tomorrow, so I'm not far from home.
All right, that's good. All right, we'll talk to you later, Trev, and we'll talk next week.
Okay, have a good one.